Welcome back. I am so excited for this episode for a number of reasons. First of all, we're in our series, Engaging Culture. And the real reason I'm very excited is not only do we have Jean, who's on our staff, did 2 years of Thrive College and has now joined us on our team, but also we have my sister in the studio.
Let's go.
The Jennifer Jackson. Give it up for not yourself. I'm going to give it up for you.
Yay!
Yay. You're like, I can do that. I can applaud for myself.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
So, all right, I have my own little spiel about your background, but tell us like on the professional level, education wise, and then what you do in life.
What do I do in life? Okay. So,
Not very meta. You don't have to go down that rabbit
So
trail.
basically I have a passion for theater. When I was about 17, I felt like I heard a call from the Lord, like, what would it be like to be a student of the master artist? And he's the master artist. So that my life has been about following that quest to answer the question. So I got my BA in theater and like collected colleges. I went to 3. And then I went and got my MFA in acting at Regent University in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And then after that, did like random things, acted. I was all the way like, on the East Coast, West Coast, and then in Napanee, Indiana. So it was kind of fun. And then that was like a talent agent, casting director for a little bit of time, swashbuckling pirate on a ship, just like random stuff. And then I went into education. So now I'm a professor at Jessup University and help lead the theater program and artistic director there, and like help run like small boutique professional theater. So I do a few things.
You do a few things here and there.
A lot of everything.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. So starving artist, not so much for this girl. You've had lots of gigs and serial careers within the arts.
I like that. I have serial careers in the arts.
I love it. So good. Okay. So that is my sister, Jen. And basically from the time that we were children, she was just taking me along on adventures. So you should know about Jen. She's a 7 on the Enneagram, if you believe in that sort of thing. And she's just always down for adventure. So I am the more introverted, like, I just want to read a book. Books are my adventures. And she's like, let's go do something. So
Think about it and then we'll do it.
Yeah. She's like, remember that book? I remember the cover. And I'm like, I read it every word. And you're like, I've actually done things with my life. So that's the sister vibes. And then Jean, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now for the Auburn campus.
Yeah. So as of about maybe 4 months ago, I just recently became the production manager for Bayside Auburn.
Our latest campus plant.
Yeah, it's insane.
Awesome.
Yeah, getting to work with a good mentor of mine, Josh. We sat down at coffee one day. He's like, hey, so you mentioned wanting to be a part of this team. So you in? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So it's been a journey ever since. And it's been really, really fun. Yeah,
That's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool.
So fun.
Yeah.
Okay. So why we wanted to have Jen on this podcast within this particular series, because, she's my sister. I'm just always wanting to talk to her. But beyond that reason is you have lived this out. You have actually walked out what it means to engage culture. So we share the same background, homeschooled, pastor's kids.
Mm-hmm.
Our mom threw us into theater because she thought, wow, that'd be a great way to socialize these kids and make them super normal. So we homeschooled pastor's kids who do theater. And from there, you've actually lived this out. What does it mean to be a Christian firmly planted, your heart with Jesus, but also living that out in contexts that don't necessarily agree to the same values, narratives, and beliefs. So with that, I'm going to turn the conversation over to Jean, and he's going to kick us off with our first question.
Yeah. I guess one of the questions I had is like, how do you like see people as you're doing this, especially like in the arts? You get to interact with, many, many different people, and you play different roles in a lot of people's lives. Like, how do you see them like before like you actually engage with them? Like, how do you, just see them, I guess the question.
The first thing that came to mind is just like with wild curiosity.
I love that.
Like, ooh, a new person. Everybody is so unique. Yeah. And even people that kind of like rub up against you, I know that those people that initially are like, those end up being my favorite people. you know,
Yeah.
because there's something about them that is like just kind of like grind your gears, and then you're like, interesting. So I've learned to kind of like lean in and be like, what's your background? What's your story? Like, what makes you tick? And
Yeah.
so I always like, some people collect stamps, and I'm like, I collect people. So I don't know. I think I really love getting to know people. And so I try to soften my heart and listen and chill and like, I guess, lean in with wild curiosity. I'll go back to that. That's what keeps like going in my head.
Wild curiosity. That's great.
That's really good. At what point, I'm curious, and I, a little tongue in cheek, but at what point do you lay out the gospel fully for people and explain who you are and every detail of what you believe so that they can know where you stand? At what point does that happen for you?
Never. It's basically like, unless they ask. I find that they're, you don't want to answer a question that people are not asking. And so I feel like a lot of times people are asking like, am I loved? Am I seen? Am I accepted? And, after you get that question answered, then they're curious. They're like, what makes you able to love like that? What makes you be able to forgive like that? Everybody knows how to love. I find the most interesting thing about Christians is that, real practicing Christians, we must forgive. And I feel like that is the super skill where people go, how do you do that? How do you do that? Yeah. So I feel like I wait to be asked. And those are just high benefit conversations. And then if people never ask, sometimes I'm like, Lord, please make them curious. And also make it clear. And then if possible, if necessary, I use words.
Yeah.
That's good.
Tell us, you have a story that I just love about a conversation you had with a jogging partner. Like you went on a run, and in this particular conversation, you outed yourself.
Oh, yeah. He took me to school. So basically, it was my first gig after grad school. And I was like, I'm in it. I'm doing it. And that's the one. I was in Napanee, Indiana. So we're like surrounded by Amish. It was awesome. And so like late one night, I went jogging, and it was like this intern apprentice and then the music director, and we're like jogging and chatting. And then the two guys started talking, and they're both gay. And so they were like, I hate Christians. They're the worst. Like they've treated me so badly, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, thank God it was dark, because I was just like running, and I was like, do I say something? Do I not say something? And I'm like, I could probably fly under the radar. And I like kept jogging, and then I was like, oh. So then I was like, I am one of those things that you said about. and they're like, what? I was like, those Christian things. And silence. Jogged. Sped up the pace. Jogged to my cast house. Went into my room, and I was like, oh God, did I blow that? Oh no. Like they're never going to talk to me. This sucks. So, and then I just kind of was like on my bed, and I was like talking to the Lord. And then I heard like a gentle knock at the door, and it was the music director. And he came in, he was like, hey, I have an apology to make to you. He's like, I'm so sorry. He's like, I have known you in this short time to be like really loving and caring, and I didn't mean to offend you. You're like actually kind of blowing my mind, because the only Christians I've met have caused me like a lot of pain. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Thank you for telling me. I'm not at all offended. I'm more just like surprised. Would you be willing to give me a shot at being your friend? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. And I was like, I'm so sorry that my people did that to you. And I feel like I don't know those people, but I do believe you. And I'm just so sorry. And that was like the beginning of like great conversations. Yeah. And I was so grateful that he was willing to give me a second chance.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's so crazy how that could have gone in so many different ways. Like, one, you could have stayed silent. You could have just been like, yeah, them Christians. Of course. I identify as I'm more like Jesus, not so much the Christian word. Yeah. So you could have gone that route. You could have argued with them and been like, let me tell you about the Christians I know. And that probably would have produced a totally different result. But I think that just that honest vulnerability of this is who I am. And I'm willing to listen to your story of who you are and where you've been. I think that produces such a different result than typically how we see those conversations end, which is not good.
Yeah. And I think it was probably important for me to say, I believe you. You know, I believe you. And also, you know, that word, instead of just abandoning the word Christian, you know, just be like, I own to it. Those are my people. And it sounds like some of them really hurt you. And then I can stand in the place of that and say, on their behalf, I apologize. And that's not how we're meant to be. And I truly apologize. And then even though I wasn't rude to him, I could stand in the place of the people that had caused that offense, my people.
That's really good. And also, obviously, what he said about you is like, he had encountered something different, and you didn't even know you were. He didn't even know he was creating a new file, right? Because he had you in a different file, right? He had you in the this is my person. These are my people. They agree with me. Yes. And it was through experiencing your kindness that eventually led him to say, I think I need to create a new file called different Christians than the ones I've met, you know, kind Christians. That's really good. Okay, one more story and then we'll get back to your questions. Because obviously I have a lifetime of stories with Jen. So you're so fun to me in that you have all these like theater stories, but then also I remember you taking core humanities where you're at a secular university. You're exposed to so many different worldviews, and specifically within this class, you found a way to still share your faith that I have always found fascinating. So can you tell a story of your core humanities class?
Yeah, I guess like as you're asking me those questions, I realized I'm like, oh, the thing is, it's by surprise.
This was not planned for.
Not at all planned.
Jennifer's secret plan to convert the world.
On mission. I just like stumbled into it like Mr. Magoo. And so anyways, I basically was having a really hard time in the class. So I was failing.
There you go.
And then I was like, you know what?
So many books in this class.
I was like, you have to read a lot. And I got to take notes. You got to pay attention. And there's like a lot of people. So anyways, we had a study group because I was like, y'all are going to help me succeed at this class. And so we're in this small study group, and it was a pretty like awesome, diverse group. Like people were just from everywhere. And like, so it was really rad because I was getting to know all these people. I was collecting people. Nice. And we were supposed to read some books in the Old Testament, some books in the New Testament. And I was like, what? And I realized in that moment, I was like, whoa, the Bible is like such a formidable force that even in this course that is so anti Christian faith, like we have to deal with the Bible. And so I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. So anyways, we're studying, we're chatting about the Bible. I was like, thank goodness, like I can succeed at this part. I have background for this. And this one gal, she goes, can I just ask a question? She was like, does anybody kind of feel like the words in this book are like alive? And I was
story's
like,
wild.
It was like the Matrix. And I was like, what is happening? And I'm like, start like inner panicking. And I'm like, this is me. This is on me. And then I look over across the table, and this other guy, Carl, who was in it, I looked down and he had a Hume Lake bracelet. I looked down at his bracelet, and then I like locked eyes with him. And then I was like, it's you and me. Like, we both got this. And I was like, I do feel that way. And then Carl says, well, and he was super smart about it. And he was like, well, I think that's a great question. And he's like, so let's finish the study group. And anybody who's interested in at least our perspective in the answer to that question, stay after. So it was like just super kind. Yeah. And everybody did. Wow. So then we finished our assignment. And then he's like, okay. And he kind of let it. And then I was like, yeah, and this and this and this. So then we kind of like tag teamed. And then from that point on, we just had our study session, and we had like a little Bible study afterwards. And that gal ended up becoming a Christian.
That's wild.
Wow. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that. I went to the same exact college, and I want to say like no one became a Christian. I had so many conversations, great conversations. That's the cool thing about attending a secular university is if you're a believer, you get to have lots of great conversations. But that's wild that you literally out of your very secular intended to be a class that really honestly dismantles people's faith in the Bible. And you're like, you know what we should do here? Let's have a Bible study. Wow. And then someone gets saved.
Yeah.
You and Carl.
I kind of feel like God is always saying to me, like, it's almost like I have this vision of God with like a giant, massive burden. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, that must be tough. Let me take some. And then he's like, girl, chill. Yeah. And I feel like in those moments where somebody's like, I'm reading these words and it's like they came to life. And it's almost like I think this is my girl, chill. Like I'm already doing the work. I'm already ahead of you.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then I just get to participate in it.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Okay. Back to you, Jean. 2 great stories.
Those are phenomenal. No, I think something that's pretty cool about both of the stories, like there was a moment where you invited people in. I think that's a common thing that when we talk about engaging with culture, it's less so much about engaging and more inviting people into the conversation because, like you said, people are curious. People want to know. And I think that that's just kind of the common thing of like, we don't actually engage. We invite people into what we're living into. And I think that's what I see when we talk about being within the culture is like, you just invite people into your life and tell them like, hey, like this is how God has been kind of moving my life. Sometimes we don't do the best at, showing that, but we invite people into the reality that, hey, we are broken. We're all kind of going through the same struggles, but let me show you how I deal with some of these depression, anxiety, headaches, burdens, whatever. It's just an invitation into people. So I think that's pretty cool. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I love, somebody said like, we're called salt and light. Salt is meant to bring out the flavor. Yeah. So, Christians are not meant to be boring. Like we're supposed to be like the life of the party. We're meant to be, but it should spark curiosity. And if we're not, then like what's happening?
Yeah.
So, if nobody's asking the question, what are we doing wrong?
That's really good.
That's good.
That's really good. Brandon said something. Brandon was on the previous episode and he said something off mic, which is sometimes like the fun of being in the studio is a lot of the conversation keeps on happening. But he said something off mic, which now I'll out him on the mic. We were talking about like, hey, what do you do in those scenarios where you just fundamentally disagree with what a person is saying? Like, how do you have that conversation? And, he's like, well, I just kind of want to, I just want to throw out there that if you say something and what they receive from you is like, that was rude, that was unkind, like, and he just threw out a bunch of words and he's like, I want you to contrast that with the fruit of the spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, like kindness. Yeah. He's like, if they're not picking up on the fruit of the spirit from what we're saying, then I just believe no matter what we say, we're going about it. And we're giving them the wrong message.
Yeah.
So I just think that that's just so powerful to be like, hey, in those moments, we may fundamentally disagree on some ideas, but the biggest message that we want people to be picking up from us, like you're saying, Jean, is, and you're saying, Jen, there's something inside of me that I hope is attractive and winsome to you. It's not just me as a Jen or me as a Jean, but is literally like God himself living inside of me, producing kindness and gentleness and peace and love that you're picking up on that makes you curious about what's going on inside of me.
I love that.
There you go.
I think a lot of times we're like, I see us having such urgency. We're like, it's now, it's this moment. I must intervene.
Jesus might come back tomorrow, Jen. So that's
like, get on it. This is your moment.
Let's do it.
But I see like God's like continual attempts, like his relentless pursuit. And, I think that timing is a thing. So there's a lot of times where I'll be like in the midst of a conversation and somebody's like, da, 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 and I'm like, is this my moment to speak? Maybe no. Maybe like let them be there. Maybe just let them. And I don't have to insert myself, if it's not organic, you can just chill and just let it be until you're invited.
That's great.
Yeah, it's hard for me to do, but I do that.
They're really good.
I guess like what are practical ways that you do some of this? Like, I don't know. Like, I guess like we're thinking like kind of more in the theoretical, like when things come up, but like what are some practical things that we can actually be doing to be engaging with people, I guess?
So I have this passage that like really comes to me as like my signature passage, the one that I like anchor myself in. And that's when Sarah and Abraham's maidservant Hagar, she's been mistreated and she like runs out into the desert and she has like no plan. She's just like, I gotta leave. These people are terrible. The Christians.
She's literally like the original church hurt
yeah.
person in the Bible.
And then she's like,
these
she's
people.
like pregnant and running in the desert. And you're like, that sounds like a bad plan.
Yeah. Nope.
And it's so bad that she has to go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, oh man, I just feel for her. And this like voice confronts her. And she's like, where are you come from and where are you going? So I follow that model and it's like God interrupted her on her running and asked her story. So like one thing that I love doing is just being like, hey, I'm curious about you. Like, tell me your story.
Yeah.
Where you come from? Where are you going? And I'll say it like, where have you come from? Where are you going? But it's like, where, you know, like tell me your story. I'm curious about you. People always like to talk about themselves, you know, and very few people are like, let me tell you about me. And you're like, no, tell me about you. You know, if you invite them. And then I find it so fascinating. He gives her a directive that goes back and he gives her a promise. And she said, she names him and she says, you are the God who sees me. For I now see the one who sees me.
Wow.
And it's like, that is what we can do. We're in that critical impasse between where have you come from and where are you going? And the directive is to see. So it might be like, do you want to go out to dinner with me? Do you want to go out dancing with me? Do you want to go on an adventure? You said you went on an adventure with a bunch of guys. You know, like something crazy might happen. You might be in the middle of like just having fun. And you have a moment of seeing. And they now see. They now see the God who sees. Because they've been seen. So practically, like, have fun. Enjoy their presence. And always listen. And always ask.
That's good. That's really
good. I know Jean can attest. We have you come in to our communication intensive every year, and you teach nonverbal communication to our students. Whoosh, the whoosh ball. Yes, come to Thrive College. You will find out what whoosh ball is. Yes. Or join Jennifer's acting class. Those are the two pathways. And it's hands down our students' favorite session of the intensive. And every single time you make someone cry in the best way. They're like, could you stop making us cry? I'm like, sorry. She's like, I'm not trying. I was not trying to make you cry. But there's this whole section where you frame it around seeing people, and you actually train our students and have them practice what it looks like to look at someone's body and see things. Like, I see that and you'll get so specific, I see that your right eyebrow is raised a little bit. Tell me about that. Why is your right eyebrow? And they're like, my right eyebrow is raised. Why is my right eye? Well, I think it's because I feel really da-da-da-da-da. And then they start like spilling their guts. And you're like, I noticed that you're walking with a little bit of a limp. Tell me the story. And then they're crying. And so it's just this crazy, like, we get to experience it every single year, but I don't think we understand how little people have experienced truly being seen.
Yeah.
And to have the gift of being seen by someone, I think is one of the most loving things that you can experience. To know, like, I see you, and on the basis of that, I don't reject you, but I'm curious to know the story behind what I'm seeing, which I think is the power you bring to that session at the intensive. And I mean, not a dry eye in the room as people start unpacking. Like, I think this year, I won't say what student, but there was a student that had just a little bit of a swagger and attitude, and he volunteered himself for the activity. He's like, I'll go. And everyone's like, of course you'll go. And so Jen's like, okay, so you're kind of walking like this. You kind of like, putting yourself out there. And he started to tell us the story. And literally by the end of us listening to why he walks the way he walks and why he projects the way he projects, I mean, the guys in his group are like bear hugging him. They're like, I didn't know. Like, I didn't know. And now I know. And that makes me see you completely differently. And I'm sorry for the ways that I've judged you. And it's just so powerful. So I just give you some extra encouragement. Do what Jen is saying and practice the art of seeing people, because it's one of the most Christian things we can do. We have the God who sees all, and we can be like him in seeing.
Yeah. And I would say to caveat that,
It's like,
no, I absolutely 100%.
Super villain power too.
What I've learned from my own mistakes is that if you cultivate the gift of sight, but you are not doubling in your love and compassion for people, it can be a weapon. And so I think that what I have learned is that sometimes you can see, but people are not ready to be seen. And you just see, and then you like ask the Lord, like, is this something that I might mention? And he might say no. And then you just literally pray, and you just like, you don't say, how are you doing? Because they may not be ready for that. You might just be like, hey, I'm going to get you a coffee.
Yeah.
And you might you just might say that. You don't say, hey, how are you doing? Because you're like, that you're having a bad day. You're like, hey, I'm going to bring you a coffee.
Yeah.
No questions. Good. I don't need anything from you. I don't need you to explain to yourself. So there's wisdom in when to speak what you say and when to be silent. And I've only learned that like in the last 10 years, because before I was like aggressively seeing people like, you're tired and you want to talk about it. And they're like, I really don't actually. I'm like, but you do. They're like, I really don't. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. So that's kind of what I've learned.
That's really good. Something you're also really great at, I know, as just your sister, is all the time, like, I know because I can see it in your eyebrow movements that you're seeing something in me. But instead of asking those questions, which you probably discern in the moments, you know, Dina doesn't want to hear that she looks haggard and tired and it's just not her best self right now. This is not a cute version of you, Dina. Like that is probably all the truth, but you know, and it's all happening in your eyebrows because you've taught me to see. And so instead what you will ask is, hey, what do you need, sister? And then that is such a powerful question because it forces me to stop and think about it much more than, I mean, man, I have my practiced answer, you guys, for how are you doing? Like, you think I haven't thought about how I'm going to answer that to people when they ask me on a bad day? Oh, please. Like I have that on lock. But what do you need? Oh, that one. That'll get you.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So very good. All right. Any concluding thoughts? We're going to have Jen back on and to close out this season, episode 6. This is episode 4. So we got one more with Brandon and then come back to hear our final episode with Jen. But any concluding thoughts?
I don't know. I don't think I have any. Yeah.
Jean's like, my mind's just blown.
It is honestly. Yeah.
Be seeing people.
Do you have like any
everything.
challenges in your new role?
Definitely, I think in the recruiting people and kind of seeing people, because it can be so easy to ask someone, hey, can like you just volunteer and help? But I don't want it to just be that. I want it to be more. I want people to actually feel a part, like they own a part of this team and that they have a bigger purpose. And it's not just in the doing, like it goes beyond just the church walls, and hopefully through what they're doing, they can see that. And so, just slowly using some of my gifts and talents to help people, break down some of the walls that they may have, or I like to say like I'm an older brother, so like a lot of this is just kind of me being an older brother and encouraging people to do that.
That's such a cool perspective. Yeah. Good for you. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And what you don't know about Jean is that his newly found life mission is to be, you want to announce it over the mic?
Yeah. So one of them is to be a family for those who don't have it. So.
Yeah.
I bet that hits people pretty hard.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So, it's been a really long journey finding that out. And, I think just looking back at the last couple of years of me being around Thrive and just get mentors and people, I'm like, wow, like God, you've kind of orchestrated my life in this way. And like, there's so many different, what we call, kind of just strings that have been intertwined throughout threads, what we call them, And just seeing how they all just kind of play into my story, I'm like, oh, like, wow, God, you do have a purpose.
Did somebody do that for you?
Yes.
So now you're doing it for the other
For
people.
others, yes.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And I can ratify that he's already pretty good at it, because last year we do this activity where you gotta, at the end of the year, we do this wrap up, close your ears, and first year student, she's just hearing it for the first time. Or just kind of like single out like the person who's most encouraged them throughout the year. And just person after person said, like, it was Jean. And it was all moments of, I felt like no one was seeing what I was doing. No one was appreciating what I was contributing. And I had a conversation with Jean. He just showed up in this way, and he, made me some of his mac and cheese, infamous.
Chefing it up.
And now like that got me through the rest of the year. It encouraged me. So you're doing it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any
really
closing thoughts, Jen?
I was just gonna say, you're so gentle. You have like this nice gentleness about you. So
Thank you.
I bet that makes people feel really comfortable.
I appreciate that.
I'm seeing you.
Thank you. Yes, I can.
She's like, I'm gonna go cry off camera. No, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes.
It's been awesome.
Thank you for being here, and can't wait to resume this conversation. We're going to dive deeper into this conversation and just how we can better be loving on people and reaching people.